Welcome back to the Transform Your Mind to Transform Your Life radio podcast and television show. I'm your host, Life Coach Myrna Young, and sitting in the guest chair today is Dr. Elia Gourgouris. Dr. Elia and I are going to be talking on the topic, the path to lasting happiness. Welcome, Dr. Elia.
It's my pleasure and my honor. Thanks for having me on your show.
You're very welcome. Yes, listen, happiness, they said, is what everyone aspires to have, but very few people find it. So I'm very glad that we're able to bring some clarity to happiness today and to the path to happiness. So I'm excited for our conversation, Dr. Elia. All right, so let me give our listening audience a brief introduction. Dr. Elia Gourgouris, PhD in psychology, is the author of the #1 Amazon best-selling book, Seven Paths to Lasting Happiness and Seven Keys to Navigating a Crisis, a practical guide to emotionally dealing with pandemics and other disasters. He is the president of the Happiness Center and a founding partner at the Global Institute of Thought Leadership. His motto, happiness is a choice, has led him to become a leading authority in happiness and corporate wellness, and a high in demand speaker at conferences and universities around the world. Over the last 25 years, he has helped thousands of people achieve happiness and fulfillment, both in their professional and personal relationships, through his coaching and keynotes. Amazing. Awesome, awesome, awesome. All right. You know what? I want to dive right in, Dr. Elia. Why is happiness a choice? Most people that you and I know are only happy if good things are happening to them. How can we be happy even if we're poor or hungry?
Okay, so it's a big loaded question right off the bat, so let's go.
Well, I'm just hoping that you unpack it,
Oh, I'll unpack it all
Start
right.
out
Don't you
strong.
worry about that. I'm going to unpack it all right. I'm Greek, so I'm going to go back to my roots. The great
Okay.
Greek philosopher Aristotle, over 2,500 years ago, said the following. He said, happiness is the whole purpose and meaning of life, the whole aim and end of human existence. Think about what Aristotle said
Yes.
2,500 years ago. So
Yes.
if it was true then, it's true now. And I'm a firm believer that happiness is a choice, but it's also a skill set, meaning that if we do certain things on a consistent basis, then I promise you and I guarantee you, you will find happiness in your life. Now, having said that, I'm glad you brought some. Listen, we're all graduates from the same university. I call it the University of Adversity. All of us. And the older we
Yes.
get, I
Yes.
got gray hair here. The older we get, the higher the degree, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's easy to be grateful, I think, in life when things are going well. That's one of the easiest things in the world. You
Yes.
and I can write on our gratitude journal 3 different things on a daily basis for 365 days and never repeat ourselves when everything is going well. But that's not how
Yes.
life is.
Right.
Life has challenges. And
Mm-hmm.
one of my role models growing up, a great man, was Nelson Mandela. Just
Yeah.
of course.
Yeah.
I mean, legend in the way
Mm-hmm.
he conducted his life, even after 29 years of being incarcerated.
Mm-hmm.
When he came out, not only did he forgive the very people that, and he was in power, which is, imagine, typically, if you're jailed and you come out and you gain power, you go after every SOB that did you wrong. Not only did he forgive them, but
Right.
this is why Nelson Mandela is on a whole different level than anybody else. He said something so
Mm-hmm.
profound to me. He said, in life, not to me, to the world. He said, in
Mm-hmm.
life, either you win or you learn.
Mm.
Meaning,
That's good.
no, no,
That's good.
it's so profound because basically what he's saying is like, listen, there is no losing in life as long as we're learning something from our experiences.
Right. Right.
And you and I have accomplished some good things in our lives over the years. But isn't it true that our greatest lessons have not come from our successes? Our greater lessons in life have come from what
From our failures. Yes.
at the time appeared to be setbacks, failures, human frailties, weaknesses, and so on. But when you look back and you say, I know exactly why that happened to me, because I wouldn't be the man or woman that I am today had
Yeah.
those things not happened to me because I learned from
Always.
them.
Always, always. I've interviewed so many people on this show that have, you know, have had terrible things happen to them, and they become coaches, and they help other people, and they say, that was painful when it was happening to me, but it created my purpose. Yes, I agree.
And then, of course, what is our purpose? I mean, I think obviously happy people they're very much in alignment. They live their lives with purpose. For me personally, I learned that early on in my life, which was a great gift, which really was to leave this world better than I found it. That
Mhm.
pretty much captures it, you know. And if the good Lord calls me home tonight, if this is my last interview, my last day, I know that I've moved the needle forward and made a difference in people's lives. And I'm at peace. But the
Yeah.
purpose continues until I don't think we ever retire from being a kind human being or a loving human being. So
Mhm.
there you have it. That's it.
Okay, so to put that in a little bow, what you're saying is that, like frog in my throat. What you're saying is adversity when it comes, because we do know that once we're above ground, we're going to have some adversity. When it comes, we've got to learn from it. But so let's say we're going through the day and we're hungry, we're being evicted. How do you decide to be happy? Are you going to say to yourself, hey, you know what? Like for instance, this morning I was walking and meditating. And one of the meditations I do is from Thich Nhat Hanh. And he says, you know, be grateful that you have eyes. Eyes, having eyes is responsible for your happiness. I'm happy because I have eyes. So I'm like walking, and doing my walking meditation, and I have this incredible amount of happiness because I have eyes, I can see, right? So is that what you teach?
I,
You might be
I,
hungry,
yeah,
you might be whatever, but you have breath or something, right?
I only control my attitude towards life's challenges. Like that's the one thing I control. There's so many things in this world that we don't control. And
Right.
in writing the second book, which was the book about the pandemic and how to emotionally
Mm-hmm.
deal with and it was the first book to market in the world. Well, that's a crazy story that I wasn't even planning on writing a book back then, but it happened,
Mm-hmm.
which I'll share more. What I discovered is that human beings typically fall into four different categories
Okay.
in how they react to the challenges that they face. And the first one, perhaps even the most common one, is the victim. So personality type, let's say. And the victim, of course, is why is this happening to me? As if it's only happening to me and not 8 billion other people. But that's the victim.
Right, right,
Down,
right,
they get
right.
depressed.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, they bring this, they have a dark cloud over here because why is this happening to me? That's number one. The second is the critic. Now, the critic will blame anyone, their significant other, the boss, the president of the country, I mean, the World Health Organization, it doesn't matter. They're always into blame, frustration, and anger, and basically downright miserable. Always mad, upset about something. Then you have the third type, which we kind of like to call the bystander. In essence, think about somebody with the deer with the headlights look, they're so overwhelmed by the changes that are taking place in the world at large and in their own personal life and so on, that in essence they're frozen in fear. They really don't know what to do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And what all three of these first personality types have in common is none of them take personal responsibility. None of them move the needle forward to some kind of positive resolution, right? They're stuck. Either it's poor me, I'm mad as hell, or just don't know what to do. I'm just frozen in fear. Now comes the navigator, which of course
Mm-hmm.
was the premise of the book, and it's the premise actually for a lot of my talks is how can we successfully navigate life's challenges while maintaining our happiness? Now, before I go into what navigators do
Mm-hmm.
consistently,
Mm-hmm.
consciously, and mindfully, there's one very important point. It's not like Myrna and I are like, well, we're navigators and the rest of you are like victims and critics. And it's not like that. Every human
Okay.
being, and this is my clinical psychologist hat now wearing it. Every human being has all four of those types within themselves.
Okay.
Okay? So, and this is the
Is it
example.
the one? Is it the one you feed? I love that
Oh,
that
it
that
is, and
parable
that's in
that
my
said,
book too. No, it's not so much the one you feed. Let me
okay.
give you a specific example. So,
Mm-hmm.
March of 2020, the pandemic hits. It's early on, right? All my speaking engagements in 1 week got canceled via email
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
over the world. Sorry to inform you, sir, due to circumstances, blah, 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 canceled. Like in 1 week,
Right.
all of it was gone. Everything that I did was gone for 1 week. So initially, did I have the deer with the headlights? Look, you're darn right. And like, what am I going to do? Like I was frozen. I
Yeah.
didn't know what to do.
Right. Yes.
There was one conference in October of that year in Barcelona, which I've never been to Barcelona, but I've heard it's a beautiful city. Like,
Hmm.
I was so excited to go. So when
Hmm.
that got canceled, did I feel like a victim a little bit? Like poor me? It's like, oh, I'm not going to go to Barcelona. Poor me. Actually, the
Yeah.
conference did happen, but it happened on Zoom. It's not the same thing as traveling to Barcelona. Anyway,
No, no, right.
and this is not a political thing, but there were certain things that our government at the time did that I kind of found sort of offensive or downright idiotic, as it was talking about the pandemic and things that happened, how they were handling stuff. But here's the thing: if I stay mad at the government, the president, whatever, for the next 6 months, Myrna, who am I hurting? Them or me?
Yourself,
Exactly.
yourself. They don't even know you exist.
Right. But let's say if I go into the poor me phase and I stay
Right.
stuck in victim mode for the next 10 years, who am I hurting? Them out there or myself? So the key to
Right.
this is feel your feelings, feel the feeling, even if you're mad. Sometimes even your anger is righteous anger. It's good. Get it, but get out of your system in half an hour and then pivot and become a navigator. And
Hmm.
so people say, okay, well, victim mode, I can relate. I go into victim mode a lot. I've spent my whole life in victim mode. How do I get out of it? So this is how you get out of it, the victim mode. Rather than saying, why is this happening to me? Perhaps we should, and then we can borrow from Nelson Mandela. Why is this happening for me?
Hmm.
Because if you ask that question, it's slight change from to me to for me. If it's happening for me,
Yeah.
then I believe that God, the universe, is supporting me. This is happening for my good, for my
Yeah.
long term. And if I learn the lesson, like Nelson Mandela said, then I'm actually golden, and I'm no longer a victim,
Yeah.
but actually I can utilize that.
Yeah.
Now, so that's kind of like the four different personality types. So what do navigators do consistently to not only maintain their happiness and not just survive, but actually thrive in life, regardless of their circumstances? This is key. Number one, they practice massive self-care.
Hmm.
So self-care, and for me personally, is a non-negotiable. And when people say, well, isn't self-care kind of selfish? I'm like, yes, do more. Double it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like, how do we take care of ourselves physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually? Because in the end, if it's to be, it's up to me. Who's going to take care of me if I don't do it myself? Right.
Hmm. Right. Right. Okay.
So
So,
self-care is one of them. That's a
yeah.
big self-love, self-care. That's a big uh attribute that navigators do well. And people who are happy for the most part, they practice significant self-care. That's how we start off.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah. Well, I am. I'm doing an ad right now, right, for on my podcast for BetterHelp, and that's one of the things that they talked about is self-care is a non-negotiable. You got
Non-negotiable.
to take care of yourself. I love that you said that, right? Self-care is non-negotiable. All right, so I'm understanding. You're right. A lot of people um, uh, are in the victim or blame mode, or you're right, they're frozen. But a lot of people don't know how to navigate the challenges that come in life. It's like, okay, staring around, it's like a river. One of the coaching things that I do is, a river goes around the obstacles, right? And a river makes way through things, so you've got to navigate. So that's great. So I like that. So, one of the things you also say is that forgiveness can also make us happy. What's the connection between happiness and forgiving people that have hurt you?
Yeah, and when we talk about the seven paths to lasting happiness, obviously self-love, we talked about gratitude, number two, forgiveness is number three. So Gandhi once said that forgiveness is the attribute of the strong. Well, I would add to that is forgiveness equals freedom. And self-forgiveness is the greatest act of self-compassion. And when I was a clinical psychologist for 18 years, full private practice and so on, I saw a lot of addicts.
Mm,
And typically when they come in, hey, my name is John and I'm an alcoholic or I'm a drug addict or whatever. First session, right?
yeah,
That's how they
right.
And I'm like, well, actually, John, that's not really true. And they're like, actually, Dr. Elia, you don't know anything about addictions. I'm like, actually, I know a lot about human nature. Just hold off. Just wait. I'm like, John, you're a husband, you're a father, you're a friend, you're a cousin, you're a son, you're a brother.
Mhm.
You also have your professional, capacity,
Mhm.
whatever you work. And you definitely have an addiction or a behavior that is self-destructive and is clearly impacting your life. But you're so much more than your addiction. So you're not just an
Right.
addict. You're so much more than.
Right.
And
Right.
I think and to me, I call it a gift from God, honestly. Since I was a young man, I was able to see the best in other people long before they could see it in themselves.
Mm.
And
That's
I would
good.
try to convey that to them. And they're like, well, you don't know anything about me. I said, I don't need to know anything about you. I know your worth as a human being,
Yeah.
not a human doing, by the way, which a lot
Yeah.
of us fall into.
You can see their light. I also do a meditation that says, I see the light in everyone. Yeah, you see their light.
You
Yep.
see the light. And eventually, as you
Hmm.
show, because you want to get them to eventually see themselves the way that you view them. So over time, you get to do that. But self-forgiveness, so take all these addicts that I work with. A year goes by, they're in therapy, they're doing good, they're sober. We celebrate their 1 year anniversary. And then we usually have like what, almost like a last interview. So, John, do you feel like your spouse has forgiven you? Yes. Your kids, yes. Your boss, yes. And you kind of go on through the list. Last question.
Hmm.
John, have you forgiven yourself? You know what the best answer I ever received? Not the most common, by the way, but the best was, I'm working on it. That was the best answer. The most common answer, however, was, no, I haven't. I'm like, John, get back on the couch because we got a little bit more work to do.
Work to do. Right. Yes.
And
Yes. It's
and
very
just
hard.
okay, but a lot of people just don't know how to practice self-forgiveness. It's not because they don't want, they just don't know how. So and I coach people in self-forgiveness. I do seminars, and it's actually really easy. I ask them to write, this is for all your listeners. If you haven't practiced self-forgiveness, today's the day to get started. Write down everything that you can possibly remember that you haven't forgiven yourself about in bullet points, nothing, not long dissertations, just bullet points. It could be 5 items, it could be 15 items, it could be 40 items. I don't really know or care, honestly, but do the work. Once you're done, I want you to put a number next to each one of those statements on a scale of 1 through 10. 10 is actually I killed somebody. Like you actually physically
Right.
committed murder. That's a 10 because people tend to exaggerate about when they don't forgive. A 1 would be, well, I spilled some red wine yesterday at a business dinner. I got it all over my white shirt. I was kind of embarrassed about it. That's a 1. Very easy to
Hmm.
forgive. And
Hmm.
go and begin to go through the process. You can do it's not easy to do by yourself, but some people can do it, or find a trusted advisor, a coach, a counselor, you know, a therapist, whatever, and go through this
Hmm.
process. Start doing your 1s, your 2s, and your 3s. First of all, you start gaining momentum, you get some practice, and then we move on to the 4s, 5s, and 6s, and eventually to the highest one. What's really interesting, Myrna, is I've done it the last 20 years, been in the corporate world doing a lot of executive coaching, working with senior leaders. When I presented that to them, this is really interesting, especially for alpha males. They're
Hmm.
very unique. The first time I did that, I had a guy, big executive, made tons of money, had a lot of things to forgive himself. He goes, oh, I'm not going to do it that way. I'm like, you're not? No, I'm going to start with my 10s, not 9s and the 8s. And I'm like,
Hmm.
why? And his whole point is because if I can do those, then everything else becomes a lot easier to forgive.
Yeah. It's true.
It's true. Frankly,
Yes.
I don't really care which way you go. Just do the work. I personally think it
Well,
makes more
yeah.
sense to start with the lowest stuff, but whatever.
The people that are successful know how to do hard things. The people that are or everyday people once it has to start off with, you know, let's do the coffee first, and then maybe for instance, when we were talking about manifesting at one point in time, manifest a cup of coffee before you try to manifest $1,000 or something. So I understand that progression, but
Sure,
then
sure.
people come on and say, I want to make $1 million a month, and they go for that. So
Hey,
okay, so I
as long as you
understand that.
forgive
So
yourself, that's what matters.
yeah.
The process
Right.
is less, it's secondary.
Right. Okay. So how do you tell them to forgive themselves after they've written this thing down? What exactly do they do?
So we start with the ones. It's like, so you spilled, coffee or, whatever yesterday. Why are you
Mhm.
holding on to that? And how long will you do it? A year? Well, and they're like, oh, that sounds ridiculous. A month? Well, even that sounds ridiculous. A week? Well, I don't know. Do you want to hold on to it? How about letting it go now? Because it's like,
Mm,
so, no,
got
and
you.
they do the easy stuff first. So
Right.
I start off like, are you going to hold on for another 10 years? Like the bigger stuff, right?
Hmm.
I've had people that haven't forgiven themselves, Myrna, for things that happened over 50 years ago.
I know. I know. I agree.
Okay.
I agree. I mean, I've
So,
seen that. I've seen it.
yeah. Are
Yes.
you going to hold on to another 50 years? You're 65 years old. You'll be 135 by the time you forgive. I mean, I make it so absurd, the absurdity of
Yeah.
not forgiving. People can go, oh, you're right. And at some
Okay.
point, we go through the entire list, and then we burn the list. I physically burn the list. I have a lighter, and I burn it. And
Hmm.
as the ashes go up into the
Let the smoke goes up, right?
yeah,
Hmm.
you're
Hmm.
releasing. But you know
Yes.
what's so beautiful about this whole process is when they leave my office and we have we hug it out. Hey, have a good week or whatever. They're like, Dr. Elia, I feel like 1,000 pounds has been lifted off of me, and
Yeah.
my only
Yeah.
regret is that I didn't do this sooner.
Sooner, right? Yeah.
The only
Yeah.
regret.
Burdens are heavy. You're carrying it. It's not, you don't see the backpack on your back, but it's there
That's
with
right.
unforgiveness.
Yes.
So, so we're talking about unforgiving ourselves as well as other people that have hurt us, or you're just concentrating on
I start for myself
self-forgiveness.
because Mirna, show me someone who never says I'm sorry, never forgives anybody else. And when behind closed doors in my office, you know what I have found out is that they never forgive themselves. They're
Give
so hard on
themselves.
themselves.
I
So
got
how
you.
can they forgive
Right.
somebody else? They don't even know how to forgive themselves.
Right. I got you. So that's
Yeah.
where you start. Yes.
Yep.
I
That's where we
got you.
start.
So
Yeah.
that's amazing. All right. Well, the other question I have here is you talk about managing your emotions,
Yeah.
and that contributes to happiness when you're in a relationship. This part I get a little bit because, you know, a lot of people that are in intimate relationships are the unhappiest people because when two people are together, all these things come into play. Um, and they saying that, 85% of your happiness comes from personal interpersonal relationships. So if you can manage your emotions, I can understand how you'll be happier. So how do you coach to that?
Specifically, first of all, you can practice all the self care in the world, have all the attitude of gratitude you like, learn all the lessons of the world, practice self forgiveness, know your purpose,
Right.
like, do basically everything else. But if you surround yourself with toxic people,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, this is going to eat away at your happiness. And it's unfortunate,
Mm-hmm.
but it's also true. So
Yeah.
I made a conscious decision about 20 years ago, 20, yeah, 20 exactly years ago, to eliminate any toxic people from my life. And people have said, are you serious? I mean, I'm like, I'm dead serious. Well, how did you do it? I
Yeah.
said, it's
Yeah.
actually not that hard to
Yeah.
eliminate once and for all toxicity and toxic people from your life. This is how you do it, though, specifically. The first thing is like, how do I show up in my relationships? So
Mm.
let's say you and I have been friends for a long time. My first question to you before we have and I call this hot communication or hot conversations, HOT, which is honest, open, and transparent. Hot.
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm going to have
All
a hot
right.
conversation, you and I are going to have a hot conversation. So Myrna,
Mm-hmm.
for the most part, do I treat you with love, kindness, and respect? For the most part, and let's assume the answer is yes. You say yeah.
All right.
Well,
All
we're just
right.
making this up. But and that's why it's important how we show up first. Because if
Right.
you said actually no, you don't, then I have no
Right.
leg to stand on. Then this process doesn't go forward until I change myself. But
Mm-hmm.
assuming that we show up in all our relationship with love, kindness, and respect, not perfectly, we're not perfect people,
I
but for the
love it.
most part. Okay, that's how we start. Then I'm like, okay, well, guess what? I expect you to also treat me with love, kindness, and respect. Isn't that fair? In other words, I can't be a jerk to you and then come here and expect you to treat me with love, kindness, and respect. That's not how it works. I got to show up
Mm-hmm.
first the right way in my relationships. But if I do and somebody's misbehaving, I'm going to call them out on it and say, listen, I
Okay.
expect you to treat me with love, kindness, and respect. And if you don't, and this is the qualifier, two things are going to happen. Number one, I mean, if it's an acquaintance or anything, I'm going to cut you off completely. We're done.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people have said, well, Dr. Elia, what if it's a member of your family? And I'm
What
like,
it's what if it's your husband?
well, yeah, I'm getting even closer. Yeah, we start with the family because what if it's your significant other, your husband? I'm like,
Yes. Mm.
well, of course it's a member of your family. At least one or two stray.
Okay. Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so then what? So then you're like, okay, so John, either you and I are going to, let's say it's a member of your family or somebody that's very intimate with you. You and I are going to have a very, very superficial relationship until that changes.
Mm,
So it's going to be
I
like,
love it.
I'm going to text you a happy birthday once a year and Merry Christmas and Happy New Year or whatever. How's the weather in New York? What, but basically it's going to be a very, very superficial relationship
Yeah. Yeah.
until you
Until
begin
you
to
show
treat
up
me with,
differently.
if you
Yes, I love it.
provide me with love, kindness, and
Okay.
respect. And by the way, I do want to have an intimate relationship with you. I do want us to be connected, but not under these circumstances. I'm not continuing with me being loving, kind, and respectful, and you being a jerk. That's done.
Right.
We're done with that. So
I love
now
it.
you give people an opportunity to step up to their higher selves.
Yes.
Although it's human nature, most people will test you. That's been my experience. In other words, they'll behave for a little while, for a few weeks and a month, and then they're going to just like go back
Go
to their
right back.
behavior.
Right.
At which
Right.
point, then you're like, okay, now you're in like a 6 month probation. What? I told you 6 months ago, don't treat me this way. Now you're on probation. I'll talk to you in 6 months. But I'm sorry, I had a tough day. Yes, I said, listen, we had this conversation. I'm not having anymore. In 6 months, let's revisit this.
Hmm.
And then when you set that kind of boundary, most people actually, believe it or not, show up better. They do. They
Yes.
just need to have somebody
Yes.
to hold them accountable. Now, on our end, of course, we still need to be loving, kind, and respectful no matter what.
Yeah.
That's
Right. Right.
that's it. And that's how you
Right.
get rid of toxic relationships, or you elevate into functioning relationships and loving relationships.
I love it. I was listening to a message from my pastor just on the weekend, and he says that they have to have a desire to change.
They do.
That a lot of people will say they're going to change and they do it for 3 months and then go back unless he loves. He was speaking right to my audience. He says, unless they transform the desire, then they're not going. It's not going to be permanent change. So I
Exactly.
love that. I love what you're saying.
Thank you.
That don't give them the opportunity to keep going back, and you keep forgiving them all the time, right? Yes.
And by the way,
Okay.
I still
Mhm.
need to forgive them because forgiveness equals freedom. The forgiveness is for myself. I still need to do that because I don't want to be upset with them for the next 6 months.
Right.
But
Right.
I would be more upset with myself if I didn't set that boundary.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
No, this is good stuff. I love that. This, to me, this is the nugget right here, because a lot of people are experiencing, they're showing up with loving, love, kindness, and respect, and somebody is just taking advantage of them. So that's amazing. All
And
right. So,
specifically because my
mm,
in my private practice, 70% of my patients, my clients were women.
yes,
I feel women are more loving, more nurturing, kinder
yes,
in a lot of ways, and they get into
yes,
relationships that are dysfunctional, and for a
yes.
variety of reasons, don't speak up.
Right.
Sometimes it takes a little too long. I'm here to say, if you're in a toxic relationship, today's your day to change course.
Yes. Hey, listen, I agree with you 100%. 100%. They're always forgiving. They're always hoping. They're always, yes. And listen, yeah, yeah. This is good stuff. I mean, we're not even talking about happiness right now. We're just talking
No,
about,
but these things
you know,
contribute to no, because when you have loving,
yes.
kind, forgiving relationships, that you come from your heart space, not necessarily mindset, but heart set. Where's your heart set? Then
Hmm.
that does contribute to your happiness.
So your
If you
happiness.
surround
Okay.
yourself with
Yes.
toxicity, I'm telling you, no matter how much self-care you do, you're going to pay a price.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love it. All right. So your book is talking about the seven paths to
Yes.
happiness. So you mentioned a minute ago that the third path was forgiveness. You want to go through what the seven
Yeah, and
paths
and I
are?
think, yeah, I think we talk, the
Yes.
fourth one is purpose. Like people who are in
Okay.
alignment with their purpose and and lean into their purpose tend to be happier. That's
Yeah.
definitely true. Number five
Yes.
is to feed your spiritual self. It doesn't have to be necessarily religious, but spiritual. I believe we are spiritual beings before we come on this earth and after we leave. And we have a human experience for 50, 60, 80 years or whatever. But
Hmm.
feed your spirit. And by that I mean whether it's praying, meditating, practicing mindfulness, listening to the spirit. To me, this is huge, actually. I personally call it the spirit because I'm a spiritual person, like the Holy
Of
Ghost, the Holy
course.
Spirit, whatever you call it, your intuition, your higher self. I don't really care what you call it, but listen to
Right.
it.
Yes.
And
Hey, the best word is source, regardless of
sure,
whatever you
oh,
put
even
label
better.
on it. It
Yes,
is source, right?
yes.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right. Mm-hmm.
listen to the source. And it's
Yes.
one of
Mm-hmm.
the few absolutes in life. I've been listening to it for 40 years personally. Every time I've listened to it and then acted on what I heard, it has always worked out.
Yes.
Always worked out. There has never been an
Yes.
exception. However, being an imperfect human being, there've been plenty of times, especially when I was younger, that I would hear it and then ignored it. Well, guess what happens when you ignore source? When you ignore that your higher
Yes.
self, your
Yes.
intuition, you pay a
Yes.
huge price. And
Yes.
Myrna, when I was younger, because I've always had a curious mind, right? I used to ask God why. Well, guess what? After all these years, I never ask anymore. I
You
don't
don't
need to
ask
ask
why.
why. I don't need to know why because why will at some point I'm going to find out,
Yes.
either in this lifetime or the one before. If I hear something, no,
I
I'm
like it.
serious. I'm
I
not
like
joking.
it.
I'm
Yes.
serious. If I
Mm-hmm.
hear
Mm-hmm.
it, I do it. That's it. And I don't ask
Yes.
why.
I
And
heard
it
you do
always
it.
works out in
Yes.
the end anyway.
Well, it does. That's like the
So
Holy
that's
Spirit.
that's
It's
number
guidance.
that's number
Five,
five.
I think. Five,
Yeah.
right? Mm-hmm.
That's number five. Number six is the relationship, like having healthy relationships and eliminating toxic relationships. That's path number six. And the last one, it may surprise people, but it's kindness.
Mm-hmm.
Because happy people by nature perform acts of kindness all the time because their own batteries are full. And I'm not talking about random
Yeah.
acts of kindness. I'm talking about conscious, mindful, and deliberate acts of kindness because
Mm-hmm.
they're happy, because they're full. On the flip side, when we perform acts of service to our other human beings, right? Something beautiful happens in our brain, and we know that. The brain begins releasing all those happy chemicals. So to me, with kindness, everybody wins. Everybody wins. The giver, the receiver, those that are observing that, it's a win-win-win. And what's really funny, because during the pandemic, the lockdowns, all that stuff, I used to promote kindness big time. I'm a huge kindness advocate. Huge. Actually,
Mm-hmm.
in October, I'm speaking at the World Kindness Movement
Aw.
in Sicily, in Palermo, Sicily, as a keynote. Representatives from the UN, over 50 countries are going to be represented there to talk about kindness and the importance of kindness. So
Mm-hmm.
I was doing podcasts, during the pandemic, because I couldn't travel, and some
Mm-hmm.
people pushed back. They're all scared and all that. And I had like one guy was like, "What am I, my brother's keeper?" Like he actually said that. Am I my brother's keeper? And I leaned into the camera like I'm leaning with you right now, real close.
You said yes,
And
right?
I'm like, no. I'm like, no, you're not your brother's
Yeah.
keeper. You
Okay.
are your mother's keeper. You are your sister's keeper. You are your cousin's keeper. You are your friend's keeper. You are the stranger's keeper. And you're the keeper of the homeless person that you see on the freeway entrance. Because in the end,
Mm.
we're all brothers and sisters. So I doubled down on the kindness. I'm like, no, you're not your brother's
Mm-hmm.
keeper. You're so much more, actually. And there's kindness
Yes.
all around, and kindness is free. Let's be clear. It doesn't
Yes.
cost anything.
I
So
agree.
it costs 5 seconds. A smile, a hug,
Yes.
a compliment. What
Yes.
does that cost? Nothing. Nothing.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. I do believe that. I do believe that. And, um, kindness to people. I mean, it's big. It releases, chemicals in your brain and makes you feel good. It's the same thing as giving. It's
The same
all
thing.
there's a saying, it's better to give than to receive. And it's true, when you give, when acts of kindness. And they started teaching the kids that very young, because one of my favorite movies is Beauty and the Beast. And what is it that comes up from there? Um, uh, is it Beauty and the Beast? No,
Yeah.
Cinderella.
Okay.
Cinderella.
Well, actually, Beauty and the Beast, though, I mean, I
Be
think
kind
Beauty
and
actually
have
is very
courage.
kind to the
Yes,
Beast. So it's
yes,
there too.
yes. Yeah, yeah. But you're right. Yes, love be kind to the beast. But yeah, have courage and be kind. All right.
And those are the
So
seven
tell us.
paths. There you go. We got all of them.
All right. I think that we missed some of them though.
Oh, no,
What
no.
is number one?
Love yourself.
Okay, number two.
Self-care, in essence, self-care. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So number three was forgiveness. All right. So then we went on to okay. All right.
Yeah.
So we got it. Okay. All right. So tell us about your book, Seven Paths to Lasting Happiness. Why did you write it? And what do you want readers to walk away with after reading?
I think I wrote it because it was my life. I work with thousands of people, and I got to witness firsthand in the front row miracles happen with people. And my patience taught me a lot. I saw people walking in here like broken,
Yeah.
hopeless, sometimes
Yeah.
suicidal, sometimes on the verge of divorce and all that stuff. And then I saw them walk out, these miracles of people who went from literally just surviving barely to thriving in life. And I'm like, and
Yeah.
so this is
That must make you feel good because it makes me feel good just hearing that. Yes.
it because it's my life's work, so I'm very passionate
Yeah.
about happiness. And
Hmm.
what wasn't in the bio, because this is so new, I need to actually include it. I just signed a contract to have my own television show called The Happy Hour with Dr. Elia. uh,
Oh,
so
nice.
this is my legacy project. That's my last thing I'm going to do. I think the last big project.
Oh, I
So
love
I filmed
it.
9 episodes out of 26 for season one, and I'm so excited. And it's going to be on the Mental Health Television Network, which is a brand
Hmm.
new network. It's a fantastic network, mhtn.org.
Okay.
Check it out. So,
Okay.
yeah, I'm really excited about that because spread the light to a lot more people globally. It's going to be streamed in at least 61 countries as of right now and growing.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Thank you.
I love it.
And if you want to know anything about mental health, mhtn.org is the source. MHTN, Mental Health Television Network.org. Remember what ESPN was for sports 40 years ago when they first started, like
Yeah.
that's 24 hours a day about sports, and people are like, who's going to
Yeah.
watch that? Well, look what happened. Well, this is the same thing, but about mental health globally. A
Well,
reliable
it's
source.
we have a crisis right now, so I'm
We do.
glad that someone is doing something about that. There's a mental health crisis. I mean,
And
you have this work about happiness, but very few people are happy. Very few people.
well, we're going to change that. We are changing that. It's an ongoing thing. So when
Yes.
people tune into to the show,
Mm.
at the end of the show, I asked them to say, hey, listen, great people that I've interviewed, people who are resilient, people who have overcome great odds and now are thriving in life, who have been through very difficult times, right?
Mhm.
Take one of the things that they said. You don't need to do 10 of them. Just take one and start
Mhm.
implementing for the next 7 days, for 1 week, whatever that
Yeah.
is, whatever resonated with
Wow.
you, and notice what happens to you.
I love it. I love it.
That's
I'm
it.
receiving. I'm receiving. Yeah. I work a lot on my positive mental health by doing the same self-care things that you talk about. I'm big on self-care. So, I keep my happiness you know, pretty good. But you're very right. I don't do all the other things that the seven hats. I mean, I have to get onto that. And what you talked about, eliminating toxic people, that's big
That's huge.
because
That's
you're
so
very
big.
right.
Yes.
That is
And the
so big.
self-forgiveness. Both of
It's so
those are
big.
really big. Both of those are big.
Yes. Right, right. Yes. So that's amazing. All right, Dr. Ilya, I love our conversation today. Thank you for, coming on the show and talking to us about happiness. I will definitely link out to the mental health channel.
Yes.
You can also send me the link to make sure that I
I
have
will
it
send you all
correctly.
that stuff. Yes,
Yeah,
I will do
send
that.
me all the links. Yes. I will have a transcript of my conversation with Dr. Ilya on the show page, which is myhelp.us, and I will link out to his books. But yeah, I mean, I like what we started off about Aristotle, but I mean, it comes from everywhere. Buddhism, the Buddha, everybody talks about, yeah, we all strive to be happy, and we are always looking for life to be good to us, to be happy. But like Dr. Ilya says, it's not only a choice to be happy, but there's certain steps that you can do to make sure that you also, make happiness your big one. And one of the things that I've always said, and you had it, we skimmed over it, which is purpose. You know, if you in fact the bumper sticker for my not the bumper sticker, the intro to my show, it says happiness is the progressive realization of a worthy goal,
Oh,
because
beautiful. Mm,
happiness
that's
is
beautiful. I
whenever
love
you're
that.
working towards a purpose. Right, exactly. That is my intro on my show. So yes, happiness.
Well, I'm going to do
Okay.
the outro for your show, which is this to your audience. This is one statement, and I want you to listen carefully. Do not procrastinate your happiness any longer.
Do not procrastinate. Yes.
Yeah,
Work
you know
on it.
why, Myrna? Because
Right.
everybody lives in the when. When I have enough money, when I'm in the right relationship, when I get married, when
Right.
I have kids, when the kids grow up, when I retire, when I forget all the whens. There are no guarantees for any of us will be alive tomorrow. So live
Yes.
your best life and do it now.
Do it now.
That's
Do it
it.
now. I
Good.
love it. I love it. Awesome. Awesome. Yes.
And thank you for
I
having me on
think
your show. It's been a pleasure.
yeah, it's been definitely a pleasure talking to you, Dr. Leah. So thank you very much for being on the show.
You're welcome.
If you guys are watching this on, you're listening to this on YouTube, not on YouTube, on the podcast, would love for you to rate and review, and also leave a comment. All right. So, oh, by the way, do you have a website, Dr. Elia?
Yeah,
And what's your social
it's
media
actually,
handles?
yeah, it's dreliagourgouris.com. So that's my website. And then LinkedIn and Instagram, I guess those are I can send those to you in an email. I'll send all that stuff to you.
Right. Okay. All right.
Okay,
So
all
I
right.
will definitely link out to Dr. Elia on social media because hey, you guys might want to get some more of this great content
And tune
about
into the
happiness.
show. It's going to be
Yes.
starting in October. So
Okay.
episode 1. So I'll send all
Okay.
that stuff to you, Myrna. So
Yeah. Send all that to me and I will put it in the show notes.
great.
All right, guys. Well,
Thank
listen,
you.
thank you guys for tuning in. Until next time, namaste.
Namaste. Beautiful.